Okay, so hello everyone. Just want to welcome my fellow cabinet members to today's meeting, and the councillors, members of the public, as they file in through the back of the socially distanced hall. I would say it's worth saying, I think cabinet has gone for an extreme form of social distancing today, and I'm sure we're beyond the 2-metre safety boundaries, but there you go, better safe than sorry. As well, so welcome back to everyone. Following the end of the government's legislation which allowed remote decision-making meetings, this meeting is now being held as a physical meeting with the cabinet members and officers attending in the council chamber whilst maintaining the required extreme social distancing. So we request that unless you are exempt from doing so, masks are worn while moving around the room. You're not required to wear a mask when speaking. Councillors and members of the public who wish to speak under public forum are now required to do so in person and are in attendance at the conference hall where they can see the proceedings on a monitor. At the point where they're invited to speak, they'll be led through the council chamber and directed to a microphone and will then return to the conference hall. And as usual, the agenda papers and public forum submissions are available on the council's website. Agenda item 18, approval to submit a rough sleeping accommodation programme funding bid, is included under APR 15 as a general exception. Because although it was published with the other papers, it was not listed on the forward plan as including a key decision 28 days prior to this meeting. But I can confirm that the chair of Overview Scrutiny Management Board and the relevant Scrutiny Commission have been notified of this. The following agenda items contain exempt appendices. Item 19, PFI Benchmarking Outcome for Bristol Schools Limited. And item 20, S&M leisure contract and financial assistance. Now, they contain information that is commercially sensitive, but I can confirm that cabinet members and the relevant scrutiny member have had access to this information ahead of the meeting. So on housekeeping, can I draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure, which is outlined on the agenda and is currently being displayed on the screen. And due to unforeseen circumstances, and this is very unfortunate, the meeting is not being webcast, but is being recorded to be uploaded tomorrow. So if you were looking for an alternative to watch in England after Cabinet today, you'll have to wait till tomorrow, okay? Helen? So please speak to the microphone to make sure you're clearly heard today as well as the meeting is being recorded. Agenda item 2, public forum. This is a reminder that statements and questions will be taken at the time the relevant agenda item is discussed, and I will reply to questions or ask the relevant cabinet member to respond at the time. Agenda item 3, apologies. There are no apologies for absence today. Agenda item 4, can I ask cabinet if they have to declare any interests in relation to today's agenda? None. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 5, matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council. There are none on this occasion. Agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny commissions. There are none on this occasion. Agenda item 7, chair's business. I have a few items I'll share with you. First off, on the composition of the cabinet. So I'm very sorry, and there's a really deep sorry to have lost councillors Afzal Shah and Kai Dud in the local elections, and also as a result lost them from my cabinet, but they still are active in the city and supporting us in delivering for Bristol. So yeah, just to express sadness at their loss. Steve Pearce has gone on to be leader of the Labour group, but we welcome Tom Renhard, who joins the cabinet member for housing and is with us today. So welcome, Tom, to your first cabinet meeting. A bit of a COVID update for everyone as well. We'll be talking about this a lot this week. So we are at a critical point in the pandemic once again. We are seeing a sharp rise in COVID-19 cases in Bristol. We currently have an infection rate of 143 cases per 100,000. 60% of these are in our 20 to 29 age group, and around 20% are asymptomatic. So the virus is circulating in our communities, and putting additional pressure on our NHS. And we're encouraging the city to get back to the basics: hands, face, space, and wherever possible, keep meeting other people if you're going to meet people in fresh air where the virus struggles to transmit as effectively. Please make use of the testing facilities across the city for people with no symptoms of COVID-19, including rapid testing and our new walk-in site at the Bristol Harbour. Anyone over the age of 18 can now book in for their vaccination. And together with regular testing, vaccination is our best defence against this virus. It's great to see the successful vaccine drop-in centre at Eastfield Park over the weekend. There will be more of that. But following the delay of unlocking also, we know that our nighttime economy advisor has written to the Minister for businesses support to make sure that we're getting adequate financial support for our hospitality sector in Bristol. But we know this is a national problem as well. So dealing with the virus itself and the consequences of the virus. But please remain vigilant and continue to engage in COVID-safe behaviours. It's a great day yesterday as well. There's, LNG confirmed the £350 million regeneration investment in our city's future on Temple Island. It's fantastic news for the city. It's more momentum, it's more delivery, and it's more secure in the kind of the scale and pace of investment that Bristol needs. It hasn't been easy. It's been lots of work, but that's what we're here for. That site on Temple Island will have a mix of residential, hotel, office space, conference centre, 40% affordable homes, and a GVA over 25 years of over 800 million pounds, which is a fantastic boost for the city, and was certainly the best possible use of that site. Also, on another delivery for Bristol Sport have submitted their planning application for a new 4,000-seater indoor stadium for the Bristol Flyers basketball team, which is right next to the existing stadium, Ashton Gate. It's fantastic. Again, more ambition for Bristol, more delivery. On the Bristol front, sports front as well, I'll just take this occasion to send a message from all of us to all the Bristol Bears players and the management and leadership team. Just say how proud we are of them, how much they've inspired the city this year. It was a really unfortunate result over the weekend. I was listening to that as it was going down. That second half and those last 15 minutes were agonising. And we're really sorry for you that you missed out. But we're really pleased for the city that you've lifted us all up. You've brought excellence to the city, and really value what you've done there. And we're also delighted to announce our Going for Gold award in Bristol. And now this is an innovative approach towards tackling food inequality, reducing food waste, and increasing urban growing that's seen Bristol become only the second city in the UK to secure gold sustainable food city status. And again, there's a big thanks to go to Asher, who's been, all over this, and everyone else, all the other community organisations across the city who have really campaigned for food sustainability within Bristol. And finally, just to give you an insight into a challenge we are navigating at the moment in the city. So many of you would have heard of the Afghan resettlement scheme. The government has written to local authorities across the country, asking them to consider taking families of Afghan interpreters. We want to do this as a city. We are a city of sanctuary, and I think it's a badge of city pride and national pride, not only to be a city of sanctuary in general, but to be a place that offers a home to those people who supported our forces overseas in general, in particular as well. Unfortunately, the funding model offered up by national government is wholly inadequate. And we are, at the moment, with core cities, writing to government, asking them to step up with adequate funding so that we can do what we want to do, is live up to our status as a city of sanctuary and offer a home to these people who help keep our servicemen and women safe. In their acts of service to our country. So there'll be more on that over the coming weeks as we get the response from government. But I just wanted to share that because that's one of the kind of dilemmas we face. We want to do it, but the resources from government are just not adequate to enable us to do it in the way that we would wish. Okay, so let's move on now to agenda item 8, the Bristol bus stop suspension charges. And I'm going to introduce this report, which essentially increases the fees companies pay when bus stops are closed, when those companies are undertaking works, street works or building works. So the current charge is based on the hourly rate of a service inspector who's there to ensure that the disruption to citizens, bus services and the road networks are minimised. But we've reviewed the fees, which showed that the current charges that we levy, first, are no longer cover the costs of providing the service, and second, they're actually lower than the fees charged by other local authorities, including one close to home of North Somerset. And the majority of these authorities actually charge higher fees for bus stop suspensions than us, and also they make a flat charge instead of an hourly rate. So we're changing that. This is about making sure people who work in Bristol respect our city and respect the people who have to live, work and move around it, and obviously supporting our public transport offering. So on this item, we've had one public forum statement and 3 questions. So I'm going to invite Dave Redgewell, who's our first statement, and he has 2 questions. So Dave, can we welcome you in? And just while you're coming in, just want to say welcome, Dave. I know you've been in and out, getting some healthcare, and it is it's a real pleasure to have you back. And you always, you keep the best interests of the city and the city region in your heart. You're always on it, and we really welcome your contributions. But please, your statement question.
Yeah, I've no problem with the actual charges. It's just making sure that when the charges are carried out, that the actual responsibilities for making sure that information is correct to the travelling public, which of course has been split between the City Council and the West of England Combined Authority with the...
Dave, can you just put the microphone a little bit closer to make sure we capture it?
With the information team and Travel West, the company that runs on behalf of the authorities, all the information for passengers now fully at WECA. So I think what we're asking really is to make sure that there's joined up. And then the second part of that is to make sure that when the stop is closed, that there are adequate disabled access and provisions put in place. And I do think there's a bit of work here to go on between WECA and the city to work out how these structures should work in view of the fact the government has brought in Bus Back Better, and we're in a bidding competition as a city region, obviously for money for the bus network, including infrastructure. So infrastructure and the buses need to go together. How you make that work, Marvin, is for you and Dan to work out, but it does need to be worked out.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. We'd certainly take that on. Can I just also personally ask you as well to bring that, make sure that's on the agenda for the Transport Board as well, but we'll take that into our conversations with the Combined Authority, certainly.
Yeah, certainly, and the point you make about North Somerset is very welcome because the government has pushed... God, I wish they'd done a devolution deal. They just pushed North Somerset in on the Bus Back Better deal, so they have to be part of it with the rest of WECA, which I welcome. But again, we need to work closely with North Somerset on this as well.
Thanks, Dave. You can ask your first question.
Yeah, my first question is about working to get... I welcome the charges. I just make the note that the combined authorities with Andy Burnham and with Andy Streets obviously do it under one authority, and I think that's really where we need to go, but that's going to take some time. So that's my first question, really. Yeah,
so we'll certainly raise this be raising this as a key point of our relationship with the combined authority and do our best to get a regional approach on it.
Thank you. And the second question is coming from my colleagues. I'm a trustee of the Disability Forum for the City. I'm from South Gloucestershire. And the second question really is about delivery, and I had the same question with South Gloucestershire, is making sure when these contractors like YTL, like Penetton that now owns Bristol Water, come along and do the works, that we somehow make sure they do what they say on the tin and provide the drop curbs for the wheelchairs, the notices and the temporary bus stops, rather than just moving a flag down the road and making sure it's very difficult for the travelling public. And I think there's some work there, not just with the city, but also with the contractors that work within the city region.
Yeah. I think, I'm looking at Stephen here. It was certainly, I think there should be, a Bristol standard, isn't it? Of when you leave something, you leave it better than you took it on. And there need to be some minimum requirements for anyone undertaking any work. So, again, we'll certainly anchor that in, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I would say that should also be part of the work coming out of the Transport Board as well, when we think about that comprehensive approach to transport. But really appreciate your
I mean,
question.
with the Transport Board, all I'm going to say is that now we've got the Metro Mayor in the form of Dan Norris, we just need to integrate more with the WECA, make sure that they're at the table on all our meetings and make sure that they're part of the decision processes so it goes across the sub-region. I just passed that back from people on the board.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it, and welcome back. Our next speaker is Marley Bennett, who has one question. Newly elected councillor. Welcome, Marley. This is your first cabinet as well? As a councillor, that is.
Hello. First time doing this, sorry. Completely associate with myself with what you said earlier about it being great that so many people went to Eastwell Park to get vaccinated over the weekend. Great to see so many young people doing that. I'm pleased to see that this item on the agenda, we committed to increasing the penalties on delays to roadworks in our manifesto, and these charges will support this. My question is whether this new system will mean repairs and roadworks are completed more quickly, as developers will want to avoid paying the charges.
Well, that's certainly part of the intention. We anticipate that companies will be seeking to avoid these charges. They will be working smarter, quicker, more coordinated way, and they'll also be communicating with the public as well, as we all need when we take works on in the city. So we certainly hope that will be a consequence, but we'll keep monitoring it. But I think actually outside of the charges, many of the companies that we talk to now agree with us that they want to work better. They don't want to have their company's brands associated with disrupting the lives of Bristol citizens, and neither do we. So the charges are one thing, but just doing a job excellently as well, as many of them want to do, is another.
Great. One of the things in the report is that the increase is to cover extra costs. Would it be possible to increase this penalty further so it includes things like investment into active travel?
We'd have to review the charges, as they go. I'm not sure if that would be possible, but I'll check with the transport team. I mean, what we do, while we do want to charge and make sure people are aware there's a financial cost to disrupting our existing way of life, we have to remember that many of the people doing things are doing things that will benefit Bristolians as well, whether it be putting in heat networks, digging up the roads to fix broken pipes or develop homes. So we don't want to make those positive interventions, we don't want to penalise those positive interventions. We just want them to be done as best as possible. But Marley, we can certainly look at all the options.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can I ask, did any other cabinet members wish to comment on this? There were no more questions or statements. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Marley. So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Okay, so on to agenda item 9, Blaise Plant Nursery. Asha, you're going to bring this report?
I am, thank you. So the report in front of you is to seek approval to spend up to 3.5 million over the next 4 years for the cost of sales in Blaise Plant Nursery, and to also seek approval to deliver the spend through direct awards to our suppliers. Back up until 2017, Blaise Nursery was predominantly producing and selling wholesale seasonal bedding plants and hanging baskets to other local authorities. But as a result of some of our belt tightening, I should say, we were looking at ways in which we could expand the business. And I'm really delighted, actually, that our our pivot towards actually delivering retail sales and actually opening up our own kind of garden centre on site has been extremely successful, and we've seen sales grow by up to 240% over the last 3 years. The COVID pandemic, as we know, resulted in a significant upturn in our sales, with the public's renewed interest in gardening and more time for them spent in their garden. So we are now currently working on and developing and implementing a number of growth opportunities, and this additional sum of funding will enable us to really ramp up our sales and increase the amount of stock that we have available to the wider public. I will also say as well that I'm really delighted that as a result of COVID last year, we have 2 years now on the dot been able to distribute free plants right across the city to a number of community, I think up to 50 community food growing organisations, and our intention is to continue to do that in the near future. So I'm just asking for permission to spend. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. So we have 2 public forum questions on this item. The first is from Councillor Massey. Welcome back, Brenda. Yep, might need some assistance.
I'll do my best. I'll stand on tiptoe.
No, someone's going to adjust it, you know.
One of the unexpected side issues of COVID. Yeah, I was really pleased to see this item on the agenda. I think most of us have actually done more gardening over the last year, 18 months, than we've ever done for a very long time. And Blaise Plant Nursery is well known as being a really excellent place to go. I know a few years ago a group of councillors went there, and we were absolutely amazed to see how much went on and how it's actually used to supply plants for other authorities too, which is great. But given, and I really do welcome this report, given that this is an ideal opportunity, I wondered if any thought had been given to using it for work placements for young people who may be disadvantaged and possibly have mental or physical issues, because it could be a really good way of introducing them into how to grow plants, as well as perhaps with selling them on to the public. So quite a lot of opportunity there to make use of it.
Thanks for the question, Brenda, and can I just say it's really great to see you. So yes, all of that is included in our plans. Prior to the restrictions around COVID, we were already working to do this, so we are currently working with City of Bristol College and our colleagues in the Employment and Learning Skills team. Now that restrictions are beginning to ease, we're picking this back up and hope to offer placements for young people with mental or physical issues in the near future. I had the opportunity of actually meeting some individuals, because we also work with Leyhill Prison on a scheme which offers work placements for people who are due for release. And placements are offered with Leyhill, staff supervision to people who are keen on developing their skills in gardening and horticulture and really want to pursue work in this area. And this has been really successful and has been ongoing for quite a number of years. So we will continue to work on that scheme, expand it, and expand it across our wider parks and green spaces in the city.
Brilliant, thank you. Could we perhaps have an update in about 6 months' time on how
Of course,
of
course. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you very much. We have another question, also this time Councillor Don Alexander. And welcome back to you as well, Don.
Thank you very much, Marvin. Thanks. Blaise Nursery has become quite a destination for people in my ward, and it is in my ward, and I'm very proud of it. And I'm very proud of the officers who have persevered many years to make it the success and the commercial success that it is as well. It's quite remarkable. And it's also, it's supplied a lot of plants in an agreement with the council. It supplied a lot of plants to growing groups, especially in deprived areas. Really emblematic of the One City approach and how that's brought people together to the benefit of our most needy people. And Incredible Edible have got a wonderful railway garden in Avonmouth, and I must give that a mention. But back to the question. Can you assure us that we're going to continue to supply those plants to the groups that have so enjoyed them this year, as growing has really taken off across the city during the pandemic, please?
So, Councillor Alexander, again, great to see you. And yes, we can. Actually, Rod Pooley, who is the officer who manages Blaise Nursery, it was his really great idea to, you know, we were going to lose all of these plants. They were kind of going to die during COVID, and we thought, well, what are we going to do with all of these? And he came up with this really great idea to distribute it across the city. And as a result of that, I said, we need to just do this on a regular basis. So I can tell you now that we've already worked with up to 50 groups, which includes groups in Lawrence Weston and Avonmouth and Southampton. We'll continue to do this over the next 3 years. We're now also linked up with Lawrence Weston Community Farm in readiness for next year. And its success is also down to the fact that the Sustainable City and Climate Change Service have agreed to help fund the food plants from Blaise to enable local community groups to access that. So I think in total we're looking at spending, it costs us about just over £6,000 per year, so we'll be spending that and making those plants available to community groups all across the city. And expand that, as I have no doubt we are going to see much more gardening and food growing projects grow across the city over that time period.
Thank you very much, Asha. That brings me on to my next question, which is regarding allotments, very close to my heart.
Yes.
There's going to be a rent freeze, I believe, here this year, which is in City Council allotments, which is very appropriate given our award, Going for Gold award that we've received.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true, that all allotments around the city, there's going to be a rent freeze this year, or is in fact it's going to be even better than that?
So there is an intention to have a rent freeze around allotments. This year we're actually in the middle of developing our new Parks and Green Spaces strategy that will also include an completely revised allotment strategy. So the city, allotment owners and others will have an opportunity to be consulted on, and we want to kind of co-create that strategy. So watch this space. But the aim is to make gardening far more accessible to people, and if it's the cost that's an issue, then that's something we need to look at.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Don. So that's the... sorry, can I ask any Cabinet members if they had any comments on this item? Helen.
Thanks very much, Marvin. And it was a comment really about Brenda Massey's point about the opportunities that there are at Blaise Nursery for employment or work experience for people with disabilities. And it's something that we'd already had when Steve Pearce had the responsibility. We'd already had some discussions about our We Work for Everyone programme. So that's about getting people with learning disabilities into employment, and we want the City Council to be an example of best practice in doing that ourselves, and Blaise is a perfect place to do it. And of course there's the links not only with the horticulture and retail, as Brenda said, but there's a wider opportunity on the Blaise estate about landscape maintenance and all of those other things. And in fact there's quite an opportunity for a bit of a hub there for all sorts of activities, because just across the road is the Avon Riding Centre, so there's a lot of opportunities for us to link up. But just picking up Don's point as well, you may have seen some of the Blaise plants when Hartcliffe Millennium Green was featured on Countryfile a few weeks ago because it actually showed the van from Blaise turning up with the plants, and those I can report because I've been up there on a litter pick that the cabbages and the lettuces are all doing very, very well. Thank you.
Yeah, we were watching them filming as I was up there visiting the Adventure Playground at the time. So, yeah, great. Okay, thank you very much, Helen. So without any more comments, I'm going to hand back to you now, Asha, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Asha. So on to agenda item 10 now, which is the paper extension of the Cultural Investment Programme. Councillor Craig Cheney's bringing this paper.
Yeah, thank you, Marvin. This report asks Cabinet to approve the extension of the current round of the Cultural Investment Programme for an additional year to the 31st of March 2023. This will extend the funding organisations receive through our Openness and Imagination programmes to help them stabilise and rebuild from the impact of COVID-19. This decision would align us with the Arts Council England's offer of a one-year extension to all national portfolio organisations in 2020. We know that for many cultural and creative organisations, this funding is a lifeline given the restrictions they've endured over the past year and the continuing uncertainty that they and the city face amid the delays to the lifting of COVID restrictions. When it is safe for us to emerge from restrictions, we want to make sure that some of our most loved and valued cultural institutions and organisations are able to continue to enrich life in Bristol. From organisations like Norwest Media Centre, Many Minds, the Parrot Orchestra and the Asian Arts Agency opening up opportunities to participate in and enjoy culture to communities across Bristol, to iconic events such as Bristol Pride, St Paul's Carnival and Redfest, that we want all to enjoy once again when it is safe to do so. This funding will help Bristol's arts and culture sector to thrive and remain accessible to all, a key ambition for us as we recover from the pandemic.
Thank you, Craig. So we have 5 public forum questions on this item. First one, I'm going to welcome back Councillor Marley Bennett.
Could the Mayor or Cabinet say whether there's been any increase in funding to assist with post-COVID reopening in the cultural sector, especially considering the latest delay in easing restrictions?
So, no, there hasn't been. Government has failed us in this regard, and we're calling for funding for this sector now, especially after a decade of austerity and now the pandemic. What we have been able to do is appoint a nighttime economy advisor to support the entertainment and hospitality sector and advise on how we work towards recovery, which includes some aspects of the culture sector. We've given ongoing support in the form of advice and signposting to other funding and resources from culture and creative industries officers. We also contribute to the YTKO business support offered through the economic development team throughout the pandemic, and which has included cultural organisations and SMEs and small businesses. Obviously, there have also been 2 rounds of DCMS cultural recovery funding, which has either been allocated to or is in the process of being allocated to 45 Bristol businesses and organisations via the Arts Council to help them transition back to a viable and sustainable operating model.
Thank you, and it's really positive to hear about some of these efforts that are underway. Can I just ask what representations has the Mayor or Cabinet made to the government regarding further support for the cultural sector? Once sort of restrictions are eased, we hope to go back and enjoy the cultural things that we did before, so that'd be really important.
So as part of the One City, or part of the Bristol at Night panel, actually, we've written to the government asking for more support. We will continue to make representations through WECA, I meet with the Arts Council regularly, we speak to them too. So we're making representation where we can and as much as we can, as often as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marley. The next 2 questions come from Councillor Tessa Fitzjohn. This is her first Cabinet as well, I understand, so welcome, Tessa.
Whilst I fully appreciate the difficult choices the culture team has had to make, cutting the arts funding, I'm very pleased that there is some funding, at least, for some of our city providers, as well as opportunities for individuals and less established organisations to apply to the Originators Fund in 22-23. Given the impact of the pandemic, it seems to me that there is an opportunity to reevaluate the way funding decisions like these are taken. For example, both Arts Council England and National Lottery Heritage Fund have changed their emphasis and are now prioritising building back better, providing opportunities for training and jobs, in particular for young people, supporting the local economy and using the arts to strengthen our community's mental health and well-being through co-production of art, encouraging personal creativity. My question to you today is, in light of this, are the aims stated in the Council's Cultural Investment Prospectus 2018 to 22, last updated in 2019, still fit for purpose?
Yeah, thanks, Tessa, for your question. I think the plan had been to review this in light of the next, so the 2022, when this funding ends.
Sorry, I'm actually having it quite hard to hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm coming through the speakers, I think. Everyone else can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we had planned on reviewing this in 2022. Of course, we've extended it by another year because of the pandemic and just because it's a very difficult time to end funding. So we continue to extend this by a year, but of course we will be reviewing all of the the whole SIP process as we get to 2023.
I have a second question. May I say my second question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, join your supplementary. Yeah.
So what work has been done to ensure that the individual organisations who will receive this extra funding have robust and sustainable plans in place to support the wider arts community? And by that, the wider arts community is the large number of freelancers who've really suffered through the pandemic. Many haven't actually had any furlough because they're not responsible, they're not, applicable.
Yeah, of course, totally understand. So as part of my role here, I do co-chair the One City Culture Board, and that, we hear from various freelancers and others on that about the struggles that they're facing. So part of the process that organisations would have had to gone through to get this funding in the first place, a test against their sort of support of the ecology of the culture sector more widely is one of those tests. They have twice yearly meetings with the culture team to make sure that they're continuing to hit that, and the grant payments are made quarterly based on those reviews. So it is reviewed, and yes, they do have a wider impact on the cultural ecology of Bristol.
May I ask a supplementary question?
You get a supplementary, yep. Please do.
I'll take advantage of this. I've worked in the arts sector, and I am surprised by the choices that you've made in the organisations, not all of them, but you have major arts organisations in the city, like Watershed and Andrew Kelly's organisation, very well funded by Arts Council England, and probably have benefited quite a lot from the COVID emergency fund. And I just felt that I'm not sure they need it, but other people really do. There are grassroots organisations who really do need it. So I would just ask you to think about that. So it's more a statement really than a question.
No, thank you, and absolutely. And actually, I was talking today to a few people around the building, and I met with John Finch last week to discuss exactly that. How do we, as we come out of this recovery, use funding, for example, that comes down for economic recovery to make sure it reaches through to cultural organisations, because we know they're so vital to the city, and not the big six or the few others that are very good and very adept at getting funding from other sources. So absolutely, totally agree with you.
One of the challenges is some of those big outside funders make their funding contingent on our support as well. So we can be held over a barrel. So it's just not, it's not as, I'm not saying you're saying it is, but it's quite complicated in that front. So we are a vital funder. 7 years with Arts Council England,
so I know the kind of conditions that they put on stuff. But
please share them. And one of the things that we could ask you to do then is, as you make this case for the grassroots organisations and inclusive economic development, as we have built our record on, that maybe there can actually be some advocacy with those big national funders as well, directly from yourselves.
I'd be very happy to work on that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I understand we had a question two questions, or a question from Annie Stafford Townsend, but she's not actually here. I think that was the last of the questions then, am I right? That was, if Annie's not here, that's the last of the questions. Okay, so can I offer it to any Cabinet members to comment on this item? Okay, thank you very much. Well, Craig, thank you for bringing this. It's been one of the sectors that's faced some of the biggest challenges, so we really appreciate your work on this. But let me hand back to you now to take the decision, which I support, and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you, Marvin. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. So on to agenda item 11, new Regeneration Service and Funding. And this is with me, this item. And this report is actually all about delivery. And it sets out the establishment of a new regeneration service within the Growth and Regeneration Directorate. And this will help us deliver our aspirations of sustainable and inclusive growth. So we'll continue working with communities, developer partners, stakeholders to build the physical, social and community infrastructure needed to support our growing population. We have delivered on a lot over the last few years, but we have also experienced the frustrations that have come in the face of that delivery due to a shortfall in dedicated resources. So this new multidisciplinary regeneration team will work across the council, improving internal systems and coordination across our departments to provide a single, coherent voice. And it will mean that we can take place-based approaches to drive and deliver inclusive and sustainable growth. Other departments of the council will continue to focus on their own delivery, including housing delivery, but this is more investment and more reorganisation of the organisation to make sure we are delivering at the scale and pace and in the way and to the standards that the city needs and deserves. So we have 3 public forum statements and 8 questions on this item. So we've received questions from Joanna Booth and Tony Dyer, who were unable to attend, and Mersh Clark, who is in attendance. So we'll get the statement from Mersh Clark, and you have 1 minute. I'll give you an indication when you have 10 seconds to go, okay?
I hope you will have had the opportunity to read the statement submitted on behalf of Friends of Redland Library, which asks for the Cabinet to withdraw the cut of £30,000 to the Library Book Fund proposed under Item 11, Regeneration Funding. The 2 points I'd like to emphasise are firstly that libraries should be at the core of communities as they offer the possibility for personal transformation and growth. They are personal regeneration hubs. It is paramount that existing libraries can continue to offer these opportunities to their communities. A rich and varied book stock is essential to this, and that stock should be both electronic and paper-based. The second point is that during the pandemic, we saw libraries used as centres for surge testing, and that's just another example of the value of libraries in communities. We hope that the new Regeneration Service recognises the important community service that libraries offer, and we trust that libraries will be central to will be central features in plans for all new communities.
Thank you very much. So the next question is from Councillor Paul Goggin. Is Paul with us? No? Okay. Okay, the next 2 questions are from Councillor David Wilcox. Sporting a very fetching T-shirt for your first Cabinet meeting, Councillor Wilcox.
A sustainable Bristol coffee grinder, yes.
I would expect none less.
My first question is that I welcome the creation of the new service to provide a single point of contact for both the general public and councillors, which will hopefully enhance the council's ability to deliver projects for Bristol. I note that it is proposed to remove headcount from the Development Management, Traffic and Highways, Parks and Green Spaces and the Energy Programme Manager. I can assume that the EPM is a role made redundant from the sale of Bristol Energy, but what other projects will now not be completed?
Thank you very much. I can never resist on the word assume as a 17-year-old. Assumptions are always very dangerous. I was taught quite ferociously by some sports leaders once. No, I mean, it's great that you welcome the report. All our regeneration, we're not going to be dropping anything specifically. If you have anything in particular in mind, any particular dangers, then that you are concerned about, then please do let us know. But our full roster of delivery is still on the table for us.
Okay, I have a supplemental. What percentage of the library services book fund does £30,000 represent? If it is their entire budget for new books, then some other funding stream should be found.
In terms of, Asha, you wanted to come in here?
Yeah, our book fund is, it may be less than 0.5% or something. It's not very big, and we already invest quite a significant amount of money through the Libraries Innovation Fund. That's £100,000 that we're investing directly into community groups and projects associated with libraries. So that 30,000 is a mere drop in the ocean to the budget. I think it's nearly £1 million.
David, did you have do you want to go to the second question?
Yes, please, yeah. The new Regeneration Service is set up to provision projects in central Bristol, the city centre, Western Harbour, Froome Gateway and central Bedminster and Temple Quarter. These sites will not meet the strategic requirement for 2,000 new homes per year in the next 5 years. So why aren't areas like Lockleys and Whitchurch, where the majority of new houses are destined to be built, included in its remit?
So I think, I'm not sure I can kind of take that statement in the premise of your question. The sites in Western Harbour and Temple Quarters you just mentioned there will be taking many of the houses. So it's not that Lockleys will take the majority. So we do have to be careful about making statements like that. There are areas in which we go when people say we're taking all the houses, why isn't anyone else happening them? So as a council, it's really important that we don't feed into that. But the housing delivery team is leading on areas where there's going to be housing delivery. That it will focus on the areas of growth and regeneration as outlined in the report, and that would include areas right across the city to bring forward the numbers we need to bring forward in the way we need to bring them forward in the quality of homes.
I've got a supplemental. The creation of the Regeneration Service is taking £242,000 from the Cultural Services budget, and the decision pathway for the extension of the Cultural Investment Programme is asking for a budget increase of £636,000. Isn't this robbing Peter to pay Paul?
No, because we deliver on the city's culture in many ways. Culture, one of the conversations we had to have, culture isn't just about venues in the middle of the city. Culture is what it is like to live in a place. Someone without a home, if we fail to deliver as a city, is not really participating in the city's culture. They won't have the financial and emotional space to do so. So we're delivering for the whole city, and we have to make sure that by delivering, building homes for people in the right way, in the right places, means that people can participate in an inclusive city culture. And we're always making decisions about we allocate our resources. Very easy to point out where things are not happening without looking actually the whole picture, which I'd suggest that as elected leaders of the city we should be doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Can I ask any cabinet members if you had any comment on this item? Nicola.
Thanks, Marvin. I just want to say that I'm absolutely thrilled to see this item on the agenda. In this new administration, it's been a real piece of work in the previous administration to sort of understand our role in regeneration, our role as a strategic landowner ourselves as a council. And so this new service, I think, is just going to be a phenomenal sort of step forward for us. I think in the debate that's happened so far on this item, we talked quite a bit about homes, but regeneration is not just about housing delivery. There's so many other facets to regeneration, which you might not necessarily get debated in this chamber regularly, but there's the relationship with employment and all types of jobs for Bristolians. And funnily enough, there's not always a queue for people trying to create spaces for jobs for all Bristolians, and that's our role in the City Council, to help facilitate all jobs to come forward in the city. There's also the relationship with community spaces, public realm, river systems, our walking and cycling routes through these spaces. And I think that it would be a disservice to this future regeneration team to just hone in on housing delivery. And I know as an administration, of course, we're not doing that, but it's interesting to see the questions have been pivoted around the delivery of just homes. But there is so much more to this team. I'm chuffed to bits to see this paper come through, and I'm really pleased to see it being supported today. Thanks, Marvin.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Asha?
Yeah, I just wanted to just say, so obviously I don't have the figures in front of me. So in terms of the total amount of the book fund, because we've also just invested quite a significant amount of money in changing over all of the ICT equipment in all of our libraries. So I'd like to be able to respond to the statement that was made by Mersh Clark in relation to how much we spend on libraries, so that it's on the record that we do spend a significant amount of money on books. We've agreed the budget. I think it was last year we've agreed the budget on that. And as I said, £30,000 is not going to break any banks or libraries.
Thank you, Asha. So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Okay, on to agenda item 12, South Bristol Light Industrial Workspace. Craig Cheney, you're bringing this one.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. And I'd probably just come back to the last report. I'd probably count most of those things that are identified, for example, the culture funding, all of those were planned budget reductions from 3-4 years ago. What we've been able to do, because we've managed things very well over the past few years, is now, instead of sort of sucking that up into the corporate black hole of a shortfall, we've been able to use that and redirect it towards something positive, like this new Regeneration team. So I just wanted to get that on record as well. On to agenda item 12 then. This report seeks to update Cabinet on the South Bristol Industrial Workspace project and to gain approval to submit a change request to the West of England Combined Authority for approximately £537,000 increase in funding. As Cabinet members will be aware, the project will provide new enterprise infrastructure and facilities to accommodate start-up and growing small and medium enterprises in South Bristol and help provide new employment opportunities in Hengrove and Whitchurch Park, Hartcliffe and Withywood and Philwood. The new workspace will also help support the expansion of the Bottle Studios. Following Cabinet approval to bid for £3.9 million of external funding for the project in July 2020, £4.2 million of funding has been secured from the European Regional Development Fund, the West of England Combined Authority and Bristol City Council's South Bristol Sustainable Urban Development Reserves. Following detailed design estimates, there is a cost uplift for the project to allow us to maintain the full design floor area for the project, hence maximising the facilities available for businesses. If we are successful in this request, we estimate that the project will deliver about 16 million cumulative net gross value added over the next 5 years.
Thank you, Craig. So we have two public forum questions on this item, but Tony Dyer, I don't believe, is in attendance. And Councillor Paul Goggin is not in attendance either, so that means we have no public forum. Can I just ask any Cabinet members who may wish to comment on this item? Helen?
Just a quick one, really, to welcome this very much indeed. I mean, the nature of jobs has changed, hasn't it? So some of those sites that have been long held in different parts of the employment sector in the past, the nature has changed, and the opportunity to build entrepreneur spaces, I think, can link with things like the Philwood Green Business Park, Bottle Yard, as we've said, Hawkfield, as we took through a couple of months ago, all of those things as the shape of the economy changes. But the key for this is to make sure that those opportunities are known about to the young people, either the ones who are leaving school almost adjacent to this site in the next few weeks, make sure that they know about what's going on, because there's a bit of a perception that, you know, the jobs are all elsewhere, they're in Avonmouth or they're in the city centre, and we need to make sure that people see, young people see, that there are opportunities for them in the local area.
Thank you very much. Any other Cabinet members? Okay. So let me hand back to you now, Craig, to take the decision, which I support, and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin, and thanks, Helen. I will speak to the team and make sure that we're getting that kind of local advertising improved, because I'm not. You're probably right. You'll know more than me. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you.
Agenda item 13, still with you, Craig. Electoral Services Specialist Printing Tender.
This report asks Cabinet to approve the retendering and procurement of the Council's election specialist print services for 4 years from the current contract end date of 1st of December 2021. Electoral printing is a highly specialist service and is of course a statutory duty of the council. We are required to provide printed materials not only for local and mayoral elections but also for neighbourhood planning referendum and council tax referenda. This is on top of the materials we produce to support the annual canvass of voters to ensure as many citizens as possible are registered to vote and can participate in our democratic processes. To give Cabinet members a sense of scale, we are responsible for printing 1.4 million ballot papers for the local and mayoral elections in May. Simply put, without this procured contract, we would not be able to meet our statutory duties to ensure our elections are run in a legally compliant manner.
Thank you. And we have, which I'm really pleased about actually, we had one public forum question on this item from Councillor Steve Pearce. Welcome, Steve, to your first Cabinet meeting in your new role.
Thank you. You didn't expect to get a question on this item, I'll bet.
You won your bet.
So, analysis of the numbers of ballot papers issued of block votes and split votes at the recent election indicates that many voters did not use all of their votes. The same thing has happened previously at the 2016 election. I'm concerned that this may indicate that the electors are being failed by the official communications or messaging that they receive ahead of polling day and at the polling station. Some members of our communities appear to have been seriously and serially disadvantaged in their ability to participate in our democracy. I'll end there. The rest is talking about this contract and any future contract for printed materials. I have a supplementary.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I mean, this contract doesn't actually cover that, but it is a good point. And you know, there was training was provided to officers at polling stations to explain the process. Obviously, it's quite difficult because they can't tell you to vote 3 times. They can just tell you that you can vote 3 times. So there's a kind of or to tell you that you should vote when rather than you can. So yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and I guess we'll just continue to work on improving the explanation and making sure that those officers at polling stations do understand what they need to do. This contract only really covers the ballot papers and the polling cards.
I was using it as an in for my my supplementary, so bad me. A bit of context: for decades, voters in Bristol have only had to vote for 1 councillor at a time, and that was because we used to do elections by thirds. So for decades, voters have got used to the idea of only having to vote once. Consequently, those of us that were present at the count will have noticed that an awful lot of ballot papers only had 1 cross on them. Now, if you're in a single-member ward, 1 cross is exactly the right number of crosses. But if you're in a 2-member ward, it's very easy, in the excitement of the event, contrary to what the party would like me to do, I always vote in person. So I'm aware of what happens in the ballot station, in the polling station, and the excitement that one feels when hovering over the ballot paper. And there's 1 line on the ballot paper that tells you how many candidates you can vote for. But in the excitement of looking for the Labour candidate, you perhaps miss the second one. Many of us will have seen at the count that lack of a second cross. And of course, in 3-member wards, the situation is even worse. And I did a very quick analysis, not literally on the back of a fag packet, but it could have been, of the results in the days after the election. And it seems clear to me that we need to do an analysis of voter behaviour in the polling station, because it seems to me that not everybody is electing only to use 1 vote. I wonder if we can have a review that might investigate that.
Yeah, it's certainly something we can look into, Steve. I mean, it definitely It definitely is an issue, and it definitely does disenfranchise or half enfranchise. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but it certainly doesn't help the process. So yeah, absolutely, I'm sure we could look into that.
Thank you.
Just to say, Steve, I mean, I have talked to Tim about doing a piece of work about having some very clear ambitions for the level of voter participation within the city as well, and that would mean really investing in political literacy, just about how to participate and what happens when you go into the ballot. Was very, very reluctant to do it before the election. You know, as obviously incumbent mayor, that might be seen as tamperate, but now we're on the other side, and you know, we have quite a few elections coming up, and we've got some healthy distance between now and them. We probably could look at how we, not just as a local authority, but universities, big employers within Bristol, health service, all begin to use the networks to really invest in the city's participation in the election of the political leadership. Political leaders are not the only leaders in the city, but obviously it's an incredible opportunity for people to make their voices heard. And we certainly want a higher percentage of the population doing so. So we'll be doing that work. Thank you. Okay, so that's the end of that. Any other cabinet members like to comment on this item? Okay, so let me hand back to you now, Craig, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Marvin. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. Agenda item 14, Microsoft Desktop Licensing Agreement. Craig, this with you as well.
This really is the most exciting one, I think, of the day. So this report seeks Cabinet's approval to award a 2-year contract for the supply of licences for Microsoft Windows products currently used across the City Council desktop estate. As you'll all be aware, we use Microsoft Office products for absolutely everything, and many of our sort of business systems also run them in the background. So it's absolutely essential for us to be able to continue to service the residents of Bristol, citizens of Bristol. So proud to recommend it today.
Thank you. So we've had no public forum statements or questions on this item. Any cabinet members wish to comment? I will, actually, just very briefly. I mean, this is an example, isn't it? Even though you made the comment about not being the most exciting, it is exciting if it goes wrong. Right, and when we're talking about cybersecurity, the functionality of our machines, the ability of councillors to participate, officers to file their reports and find them and find their work easily, and it just speaks to the full reality of what it means to be a leader of this local authority, doesn't it? That it is the stuff that it gets tweeted about and there's all the commentary on, but all that stuff needs to happen invisibly behind the scenes to keep this £1 billion machine working and serving the city. So I thank you for the hours you and the team put into making sure this organisation continues to function. But let me hand back to you now, Craig, for any final comments and to make the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. I mean, the pandemic's really showed, didn't it? So we'd recently just spent a sum of money in sort of rebuilding our entire estate. Would we have been able to respond so quickly and provide everyone with the ability to work from home if we hadn't done that? Probably not. So people wouldn't have realised it, but money that we've spent in the past has made a huge difference in that way. And it's not very exciting, but it is if it goes wrong, like you say. Yeah. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you, Craig. Another one with you now, agenda item 15, 2020-21 Finance Outturn Report. Yeah, thanks, Marvin. The primary purpose of this report is to detail how the Council has delivered against its financial measures using its capital and revenue resources, to note relevant budget variations environments and report spend under delegation and new grant funding received. In dealing with the ongoing financial challenges of the pandemic, our approach is to manage the wide-ranging financial impact as a one-off challenge over the medium term and ensure that we are able to respond accordingly as the health, social, economic and environmental matters, or the consequential health, social, economic and environmental matters become more evident. In 2020-2021, the impact of the pandemic on our finances meant we incurred additional costs and lost income of 74 million. A range of government grants were received to mitigate these costs, and a receipt in advance of COVID-19 grants is to be carried forward in the sum of 22.5 million to 2021-2022 for application to specific and general COVID-19 purposes in the new financial year. For the financial year 2020 to 2021, as part of finalising the position, the following headline financial issues are reported. For business as usual activities, the Council is reporting a surplus of its budget of 19.7 million, which is primarily due to one-off commissioning opportunities supported by the CCG, which has enabled favourable financial year-end adjustments to priority areas totaling 7.5 million. Despite this, there are still areas of significant ongoing pressure to be able to balance our budget in a sustainable way, which will require national solutions. At its meeting on the 14th of July 2020, Cabinet sought and approved the creation of a COVID reserve with 12.7 million contribution from various general fund resources to mitigate the additional costs and lost income arising from the pandemic. This recommendation preceded much later confirmation of the level of grant funding the government would provide for COVID-19 related costs. In light of the outturn position reached and the existence of 22.5 million carry forward of COVID-19 grants, this additional resource is no longer required. In its place, Cabinet has decided that to assist in preparing for budget settlements and peak financial challenges in 22-23 and 23-24, this fund should be set aside with the general fund reserve, within the general fund reserve. For the ring-fence budgets, the outturn resulted in HRA underspend of 10.9 million, public health underspend of 0.3 million, and an in-year deficit on the DSG of 7.1 million, resulting from increased need within the high needs budget. These balances have been transferred to the respective reserves. The capital programme expenditure for 2020-2021 is 166 million. This is within the approved capital programme budget of 966 million over the 5 years, reported to full council in February 2020. Full details of outturn and movements are covered within this report. However, it must be noted that this outturn position is still provisional, but will now be used to form the 2020-2021 financial statements, and the imminent external audit processes may result in an adjustment of some of these provisional numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. So we've had no public forum statements or questions on this item. Any Cabinet members wish to speak? No, again, I'm just dealing with the underlying competence of the organisation, so thank you, Craig. So I'll hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just take the opportunity to thank the finance team yet again for what an amazing piece of work they did throughout the pandemic. The number of grants, firstly, that we had to pay out, the number of bits of funding that came in here and there, the speed at which they reacted, the speed at which we reallocated resources, move people around. I mean, it was a phenomenal and amazing piece of work, and big thanks goes to Denise and Tian, who's recently left us, and to Michael Pilcher for that. In terms of the decisions we made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Craig. So agenda item 16, Childcare, Development and Sustainability Service, and Helen, you're going to bring this item.
Yeah, thank you, Marvin. So the first thing to note about this report is that we as a local authority have a statutory duty under the 2006 Childcare Act to ensure that we have sustainability in the childcare sector, and that, put simply, we have enough places for every parent who wants to use childcare in the city. I'm pleased to say that we are meeting that duty and have increased childcare places, and that 97% of those settings are rated as good or outstanding in Bristol. Our commission partner in delivering this work is currently Band, who have worked with us for a number of years and have been able to offer support both to the sector and to Bristol City Council on childcare sustainability and development. I pay tribute to the commitment of Paul and the team at Band for all they do, especially in this last incredibly difficult year for the sector. The decision to extend the current contract by 1 year does reflect the difficulties of COVID and allows the service to continue to support settings and families. The cost of this 1 year extension is £305,000. Childcare became known as the fourth emergency service during the pandemic, and like other emergency services under this government, did not receive the funding or support to underpin this status. Childcare workers were consistent in being there for families and children who needed them, despite uncertainties about their own safety and the spread of the virus. I pay tribute today to all of Bristol's childcare workers and thank them for the role they play in giving our children the best start in life. My own experience of early years education was extremely positive, and my children have patchy yet fond and secure memories of their early carers. Since the onset of COVID, key worker families were able to rely on their children's settings as they continued to work. Yet time after time, the government overlooked the sector in terms of guidance and funding support. The pandemic meant that many childcare providers lost income due to families working from home and the large number of people on furlough. Childcare settings report losing on average just over £1,100 a week in revenue, and as a result 74% of nurseries used the furlough scheme, but this is due to end in September. Although most local authorities have reported expecting to lose childcare providers, thankfully Bristol has not lost any of our providers to date, and we are working hard to ensure this remains the case. The outcome of COVID is that many settings face an uncertain future, and despite the recent release of data from the Early Years Alliance confirming that the government is fully aware that the 30-hour scheme disadvantages poorer families and makes no financial sense for providers, the sector remains woefully underfunded, with government seemingly happy for providers to move to the minimum staff-to-child ratio, despite evidence that lower ratios lead to better outcomes for children. We will continue to listen to and provide a voice for settings as they navigate uncertain times, and will continue to improve standards across all our settings to give Bristol's children the best possible start in life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. And as you were speaking, the Marmot phrase "give every child the best possible start in life" was one that was, in my head. Childcare, those early investments that we know have consequences that go through the whole life course for our children, young people. It's really essential that we prioritise those areas. Having said that, we've had no public forum statements or questions on this item. Can I just offer it up to any cabinet members who may like to comment on this? Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to hand back to you now to take the, in terms of the, decision to make, this is with you. And let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support.
I haven't got that written down, so I was really hoping you would just carry on.
Oh,
In terms of the decision made today, I accept the recommendations made in the report.
Thank you.
More or less.
Yeah, I think someone allocated it to me, but it's yours. Okay, so agenda item 17, Future Bright Plus, Phase 2 of existing Future Bright programme. This is you as well, Helen.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Marvin. So this is a good news item. In order to share the decision to extend Future Bright funding further following a successful implementation of the first DWP-funded scheme. The extension, known as Future Bright Phase 2, will mean an increase of £1.5 million coming into the city over the next 3 years, which will benefit up to 2,000 people. The scheme, which is funded through the West of England Combined Authority and aims to support people in low-wage or insecure jobs and who are dependent on in-work benefits to upskill and enhance their job opportunities. The programme will be delivered by the Council's Employment Support Team, with strong partnership from housing colleagues, social landlords and voluntary sector organisations, thus ensuring we're working with individuals and have an understanding of their circumstances and potential challenges. Career progression coaches will work with people referred into the service from a variety of organisations and will work with them to develop action plans to help them take up new training and career development opportunities. This programme holds no financial risk to the Council and, if successful, could lead to a reduction of dependence on Council services and benefits. However, most importantly, the success of the scheme could contribute to closing the inequality gap in Bristol and take us closer to bringing the dignity that work should bring. But because of a low-wage, low-skill economy, so often doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And again, an issue of such importance in general, but certainly as we deal with the consequences of the actions we've had to take to tackle COVID, of particular importance now. Skills, hope in young people's lives and older people, and bringing people into contact with training and employment opportunities. Again, I think there are no public forum statements or questions on this item. But can I offer it to Cabinet to make any comments? Craig?
I need to comment that, it's very exciting that this is finally coming through. If you look at our, previously our inclusive growth strategy, and you look at our now economic recovery strategy, all of it is reliant on people being able to either reskill, upskill, or skill for the first time round. And this funding will obviously help to do that. It's a travesty really that we live in a country where people can work full time and not earn enough money to be able to pay their rent or bills, and it's pretty shocking really. So anything that helps close that gap is brilliant and vital.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, so let me hand back to you now, Helen, to take the decision which I support.
Thanks, Marvin. In terms of the decision to make today, I accept the recommendations of the report.
Thank you. And was being displayed on the screen. Okay, agenda item 18 now. Approval to submit a rough sleeping accommodation programme funding bid. And Tom, the first item you'll bring into Cabinet, so welcome.
Thank you, Marvin. I think I'd like to start first by outlining the context which we're currently operating in. We have record levels of 980 households in temporary accommodation, 350 of which are single people. With these high levels of single persons at rough sleeping and homelessness in Bristol, it's essential that we secure the maximum number of suitable move-on units to meet need and contribute to reducing expenditure on temporary accommodation. We need to take action, and here we have an opportunity to do so. As noted in the paper within the appendices, in March 2019, Alma Economics produced 3 reports that were commissioned by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and the Department for Work and Pensions, which reviewed the evidence on the causes of homelessness and rough sleeping and to provide options for modelling to understand future trends. The findings were broadly separated into 2 areas, so personal circumstances, which might include things like relationship breakdown, including domestic abuse and violence, mental illness, addiction, discharge from prison, leaving the care system and financial problems. And they also looked at many structural factors, things that are wider societal and economic issues that may affect the social environment for the individuals. These include things like a lack of affordable housing, decline of the social sector housing as a proportion of all housing, the tighter mortgage regulation and higher costs for first-time buyers, unfavourable labour market conditions and rising poverty levels, alongside growing fragmentation of families and reduced welfare provision. To some extent, as a local authority, we can commission services that can prevent or alleviate some of the personal circumstances. However, current government policy is not addressing the structural factors, and it needs to do so, as without any change in government policy to address these structural causes, reducing or slowing the flow of people becoming homeless will be limited. On the programme itself, the Rough Sleeping Accommodation Programme, also known as RSAP, is slightly renamed from the Next Steps Accommodation Programme, where Bristol submitted a successful bid securing funding for 48 units of accommodation as detailed in the Cabinet report dated 3rd November 2020. Funding is allocated on a first-come, first-served basis in this programme, and there are 2 final decision submission dates. One is the 1st of July, and the other is the 2nd of September. What has been advised by the Ministry of Housing, Community and Local Government is that most of the funding is likely to be allocated by based on the 1st of July deadline submissions. So it's imperative that we do put in a bid for as many units as possible in this submission. There are 2 core elements to the bid. One covers the residence property acquisitions, and the second covers the housing revenue account acquisitions, and I'll just briefly touch on these. So Resonance is a social impact investment company, and they specialise in creating and managing impact investment funds which deliver a financial return and a targeted social impact. This proposal is to purchase 34 self-contained studio or 1-bedroom properties via an investment fund for use of supported move-on accommodation. The council would have 100% nomination rights to the properties. Resonance would purchase and deliver all 34 properties by the 31st of March 2022, in line with the requirements of the funding. For this proposal, Resonance have partnered with Developing Health and Independence, also known as DHI. Resonance will purchase the properties. The fund will then lease the properties to DHI until 2030, and there'll be a service level agreement between Resonance and DHI. DHI will fully manage the properties and the tenants, and they also provide the wraparound support service, because we know that housing is one element, but it's then also about how we support people while they're in their home. At the end of life, we could choose to remove our initial investment and recycle this into new affordable housing provision, or the fund may be extended, or the properties be moved into a new fund. The preferred option is obviously that the units will remain as general needs affordable housing, and we still maintain nomination rights. The total fund for this element is 6 million, which is what is needed for this proposal, of which we would be contributing £1 million. Residents have carried out the research into property prices and are confident they can purchase and repair properties within approximately 175,000 a unit. Residents will be contributing 2 million and will be bidding for 3 million to grant funding. I think just briefly touching on the second element, the housing revenue account. It'll be, again, a match funding bid and would allow us to provide up to 15 properties. One of the things we can do here is potentially buy back ex-council properties to bring them back into circulation. And this will be most commonly those in high or low-rise blocks, presenting good value for money. We'll be increasing our own stock and have full control of the properties and bringing former council homes back into use by the council and directly supporting the reduction of rough sleeping and homelessness in the city. So in addition, there will be other bids going in from partners. However, there aren't requirements on us as part of those. So overall, it's an opportunity for us to bid for funding that will enable affordable housing of 49 additional properties through a combination of the proposals, should we be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. And, you know, it's a hugely significant piece of work for you to be leading off on at this time. But we've had no public forum statements or questions from any councillors on this one. But can I offer to any other cabinet members who may wish to comment on this? Asha?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, this is a real opportunity for us to really get ahead and drive down those rough sleeping numbers. I'm obviously very much aware of the fact that during COVID, we were successful enough to house all those that were sleeping rough on our streets. But you're absolutely right. We need government change in policy in order for us to really kind of address this full on. The sticky plaster approach is just really not going to work, particularly for us here in Bristol. So yeah, fully support the need for us to go after this funding, but we do need to find a longer term solution to this.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for pointing that out, Tom. Okay, so let me hand back to you now, Tom, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you, Marvin. In terms of decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 19, PFI benchmarking outcomes for Bristol Schools. This item does contain exempt information, so Cabinet members are reminded to indicate if they wish to discuss any information in an exempt session, in which case we'll move to an exempt session. But can I ask Councillor Craig Cheney to introduce this report?
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This report seeks to update Cabinet on the outcome of the 5-year soft service benchmarking exercise on the Bristol Schools Limited Private Finance Initiative. The report also seeks Cabinet agreement to accept the final proposal and secure a reduction to the annual unitary charge of £98,000 per year, subject to discussions and consent where required from the DfE and the relevant academies. The schools covered by this contract include Blaise High School, Oasis Academy, Brightstow, King's Weston School, Bedminster Down School, Orchard Academy and Filton Avenue at Orchard. It also includes Henbury Leisure Centre. The benchmarking exercise covers services such as catering, caretaking, cleaning and grounds maintenance. In addition to the negotiated reduction to the unitary charge, the benchmarking exercise also produced another of other positive outcomes. These include a monthly report on the DBS numbers and status for all operatives on site at these facilities, extending access from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for school staff at no extra charge, and a minimum of 4 work-week experience placements to each school in any academic year. These help us to ensure that standards on safeguarding, staff access to school buildings, and opportunities for young people to gain access to employment, skills and experience are formally written into our contract going forward. I'd probably also say when we first came in, it was surprising to find that we didn't really have a PFI expert in the council, but as it turns out, not particularly, because there aren't many PFI experts on this side of the fence. They all sit on the side of the private finance. We've now got one, and that he's just saved us £100,000 a year, and also improved access for school staff and extra work experience places and so on. So a brilliant result, and just shows the value of getting out there and getting the right person through the door.
Thank you, Craig. So we have received on this item, so I moved ahead here, we have received nothing, actually. No public forum statements or questions on this item. Any Cabinet members like to speak? Helen?
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. I just wanted to explain about how this report, which might seem quite a sort of mundane report in terms of it needed to come through, how it's actually sort of sparked a whole conversation in the People Directorate around how secondary school children are eating during the school day, because there's some really interesting statistics in the report around the low take-up of free school meals among secondary school children, which is obviously the point at which children have more choice. They can potentially leave site, they can spend money, buy cheap fast food. And so what we found was in those 6 schools that Craig's talked about, there was none of them had 50% take-up of their free school meals for secondary school pupils, which I thought was quite a shocking statistic, actually. So it's just sort of sparked a series of other conversations with the Health and Wellbeing Board, with Children and Young People's Board, with the work that's happening with Feeding Bristol, about how do we move the conversation that we've managed to sort of make big progress around primary school age children and food poverty, but how do we now move that conversation on to secondary school students, which is obviously at the same time where kids start to become less active as well. So it sort of feeds into all of our public health questions. So really, I just wanted to thank the author of the report. I can't remember his name. Lee. Thank Lee for sort of bringing that report and bringing it to life when he came to present it to us. And, you know, hopefully that will spark some really good work. And obviously, you know, these PFI contracts are complicated and sometimes frustrating. But if we can actually, you know, use them to do good, then it's an excellent piece of work. And it's a piece of work that cuts across the council, which is what we're trying to do more of as well. So, yeah, thanks, Lee.
Thank you. And as you said, Craig, as well, there's a quiet point you made there about the importance of getting good people into the organisation. Good people will help us cover their own costs with those savings when you talk about that £100,000 a year, plus the potential unlocking of other challenges, as Helen's just set out as well, that are not only about personal injustices, but if when things go wrong, cost us money because we have to spend more money on public services to make up for social failures. So let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks. And as a former free school meals kid, I used to, rather than take my free school meals, I would go and spend 19p on a packet of shortbread from the shop around the corner and eat that for my lunch every day instead. So I totally resonate with what Helen just said. In terms of the decisions we made today, I'll approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. I'm feeling a bit blessed now because my school meals at St George were okay. Actually, we used to run and fight to get to the front of the queue. If you were at the back of the queue, they weren't that great, but if you got there first, you were okay. Okay, agenda item 20, SLM leisure contract and financial assistance. And this item, this is with me, and this item contains exempt information. So can I ask you all, if you wish to discuss any information in exempt session, let me know and we'll move into exempt session. So this report sets out financial assistance towards the forecasted deficits of sport and leisure management, SLM, of around £980,000 for this financial year, just over half of which is being funded from the government's National Leisure Recovery Fund and the rest by the COVID-19 response council funds. So SLM are one of our contracted companies. They run 6 council-owned leisure centres across the city, which attract 2 million visits a year, employ over 350 staff, and offer accessible leisure facilities to local communities. So after months of discussions about the levels of compensation needed by SLM to cover the costs caused by the downturn in footfall during the pandemic, we've now reached an agreement on a way to calculate the level of financial support to be provided. And this vital funding will keep 6 leisure centres open, supporting our local economy, but also contributing to the health and well-being of our local communities. So we have received 6 public forum questions on this item. 4 of the questions are from Jules Lamming and Sarah Piggott, who are not able to attend and will receive written responses. So we have 2 questions from Councillor Martin Fodor, who is attending. So Councillor Fodor.
Yes, thanks very much. So I'm focusing more on the more longer-term issues, not the short-term sort of details in this particular report, because it highlights the need to choose between contractual and non-contractual options. And it very specifically says in the 5th purpose that's identified, numbered in the report, that there needs to be careful consideration of these issues to prepare for future leisure facilities procurement. And I'm focusing on that future procurement stage. So the recent experience, obviously, we know has shown how important leisure facilities are and the marginal position we're in currently. And it notes that a leisure investment strategy is under development currently. That's in paragraph 9 of the report. And it clearly says this has to be settled. I'm saying that clearly has to be settled before the procurement of the services from April next year. The report, however, doesn't give any timescale to enable us to ensure adequate, timely and early enough scrutiny has been undertaken on the development of that strategy, which is necessary before we launch into the procurement stage. So my questions are, firstly, could you confirm that there will be both a clear chronology, because that's currently missing, with the stages and the stakeholder input identified, so we know when the key options are being assessed and choices are being researched and drafted, so the optioneering. And then secondly, that this will be early enough to allow the council, all the members and the scrutiny function space to discuss this and to feed in early in the direction and the guidance of the procurement process. So there's space for this to happen before scrutiny. So we need the scheduling to take place before the end date of the strategy and the procurement process.
Yeah. Okay, so the consultants we've used are already undertaken work on different investment scenarios, and based on this and ongoing work, a report is due to Cabinet later this year outlining the proposed citywide leisure investment strategy ahead of public consultation, and a clear timeline once it's confirmed and within that report will be made available, and there'll be an opportunity for key stakeholders, members of the public, scrutiny to feedback on that, to discuss it, to participate in it.
Right, thanks, that's very helpful. Can you say how much later in this year? Because things have to be scheduled into scrutiny sometimes weeks or months ahead. And I mean, from looking today at the forward plan, there's nothing after the July the 13th at all in the forward plan, so we don't know when it's planned.
Okay.
And
So
it's because we're drawing up scrutiny agendas right now.
Okay. So we'll talk to the team and get exact dates on when that report's in. That's something I want to know. So we'll get the exact reports rather than epochs of time. Definitely.
Okay. Thanks very much then.
Thank you. I think that's the only one we had for this item. Can I ask any Cabinet members if they wanted to comment on this? No? Okay. Okay, so in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. So agenda item 21, Corporate Risk Management Report. And I'm going to ask Craig Cheney to bring this item.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. The corporate risk report summarises the key strategic risks and actions being taken to address them. During quarter 4 of 2020-2021, there were 24 risks on the risk report, of which 3 were deemed critical. 2 of these remain unchanged from the previous quarter, relating to risk to delivery of affordable homes to meet the needs of Bristol, and also the delivery of the capital programme. There is 1 new critical risk, which relates to the provision of leisure centres across the city. 1 previously critical risk relating to safeguarding the vulnerable children has reduced from critical to high. Full details on all the risks are provided within the report, which is just for noting.
Thank you very much, Craig. So we have actually had 2 public forum questions on this item from Christine Townsend. So, Councillor Townsend, would you like to bring your questions?
I'm not really interested in the 2 that I've sent in. I'm quite happy to have those in writing. It's the 2 follow-ups that I'm interested in asking.
If you're bringing them as your supplementary, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so my first supplementary is whether what's in the papers in terms of the adult safeguarding risk that's gone up includes the recent Stephen May report, the Building Rights report.
So I wouldn't know the answer to that question. That would probably be one for Helen, who's unfortunately already left us. But yeah. Fair. Probably not, because it's probably too soon, because this is Q4 2020, 2021. Yeah.
Right. So when it's reviewed, that would be included.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. The other question is about. That's the only bit of the corporate risk register I've seen. And I'm interested to understand how it is that things get onto that register, because I was very surprised to see that school place efficiency is not on there, given that that's been an issue throughout the whole of this administration and the previous one, whether that's primary, secondary or special needs places.
Yeah, so there's something called the Risk Management Assurance Policy, which sets out how things sort of bubble up from the department level risks to the corporate risk register, which is essentially the process is departments have their own risk registers, they review those, the critical ones then bubble up to the corporate risk register if they score highly enough. I will presume that it's not scoring high enough, although I wouldn't be able to tell you because it's not my area. I don't know if Helen, if you've got a view on that. No, I mean we can find out.
I would say though, it'd be good. At Cabinet, it's great to talk about outcomes for the city. On matters of process, we can deal with that. I mean, you're certainly welcome to use the Cabinet time to talk about council process, and we can do that. But also, any time outside of this, in terms of with the officers and the legal team, Democratic Services, we can talk about how the processes work to get things on agenda items. So feel free to use that time outside of Cabinet as well. Okay.
And it will go to scrutiny, so you can ask about the department level risk registers at scrutiny, so you'll be able to talk about that at the relevant scrutiny commission people. This would be
right. So would you expect
that's your two supplementary questions? Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much for that. Can I ask any Cabinet members if they'd like to comment on this item? No? Okay, so let me hand back to you now, Craig. I think I can note the report. You can actually. Why don't you?
It's just for noting. So I don't think I need to say anything beyond recommending this report to Cabinet to be noted.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 22, Bristol's first Citizens Assembly recommendations, and I'm going to hand this to Councillor Asher Craig. I think you've got quite a stunning video to share, right?
Yes, I think we do. So before I launch into, I think we should watch the video and then I'll give you some background. So.
Last year, when Asher metaphorically reached her hand across the chamber floor in the full council, when we decided that we needed to reboot democracy, we never really thought that we'd end up a year later with such a fantastic set of recommendations. I think it really goes to show that if you trust people, if you give the citizens an opportunity to have informed opinions, they will make the right decisions. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank citizens, all of those people who took part, all the facilitators and the advisors who gave up their time to tell us how they want us to build back better and to recover from COVID.
And I also want to thank all of the Assembly members who participated in this. It was really important from us from day one that we got a true reflection of the diversity of the whole city. And I think we achieved that with the Assembly members. And, there were a lot of people that were sceptical, but I have to say the Assembly members did a phenomenal job. They have delivered the recommendations, 82 actions, and we are now going to take that back into the local authority and across our one city boards to deliver on those actions and recommendations. So we're here to listen. We have listened, and hopefully beyond this Citizens' Assembly, the plan is that we will incorporate this process into the democratic process of the local authority going forward. So again, thank you to everybody who participated.
Marvin, please accept this on behalf of the Citizens' Assembly and give it to the Cabinet. That would be great, thank you. We've put a lot of hard work into it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to thank you for that hard work and all the time you spent, wrestling with issues, listening to people make their contributions, looking at these interdependencies as well. What was the highlight of the process for you?
Just meeting all the different demographic of people that were chosen from all over Bristol, and just being able to speak to people that you would have never spoke to from all over Bristol, and just hear completely different opinions. I think we all got on really well as a group, and everyone gave some really good feedback, and it would be really nice for it to be taken on board.
It was really good fun. It was nice to meet people from around Bristol, and I learnt a large amount of knowledge about things that previously I didn't know. It was nice to get a more well-rounded point of view on how the council works to overcome issues in and around Bristol.
But what motivated you to get involved?
Social conscience. I try and sort of do different things connected with the community and the council when I can, because although we can't all be in there behind us doing different things, we all can have a voice and care for the society that we're in.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic, and we absolutely want more people to have that opportunity to speak in. It's for the health of democracy. Not everyone has to be elected or be a governor or board member, but we need to create those channels. So thanks very much for all you've done.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
When we launched the Citizens' Assembly, we couldn't have anticipated what was going to come our way as a city. We faced the pandemic in Bristol, and it's thrown so much into the air and brought incredible challenge to the way we run our services, manage our relationships. So it's come at really the right time, releasing this citizens' energy, the citizens' expertise, the diversity and the dynamism of thought that's out in our wider population has been hugely beneficial to Bristol. Next steps for us is to really make these recommendations real. We've got the recommendations that have come out. These are being fed into the whole one city approach we developed in the city over the last few years. They will be fed into the refresh of Bristol's One City plan. They'll be fed into the corporate strategy. The cabinet members will be taking these recommendations into account. So they will go into shaping the future direction, the future prioritisations that we have in Bristol. I want to give a big thanks to Councillors Craig and Councillor O'Rourke as well. The two councillors who really picked up this challenge, this opportunity, and brought it to the city. And obviously a big thanks to all the citizens who participated in the panel. One citizens panel member just said to me it's the most they've learned in a short period of time since they can remember, many years. So that's very special. Really looking forward to more people engaging in the whole process. You know, really looking forward to more people having a space to really grapple in a meaningful way with the opportunities and the challenges facing Bristol. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I just want to really give a little bit of a background to just remind everybody of the journey that we've been on with the Bristol Citizens' Assembly. So many of you may have remembered that back in January 2020, it was Councillor O'Rourke herself, we did a deal and we said, let's trial some deliberative democracy processes, and full council agreed on that. And when we were talking about the deliberative democracy process, citizens' assemblies, as we know, are just one processes. They're really good at tackling very complex and controversial issues. They bring people together from diverse experiences, and it really enables in-depth discussions supported by moderated information and leading to informed decisions. When the pandemic hit and Councillor Cheney was leading on the work around the economic recovery plan, what was really important for me and the city and the citizens, I was really conscientious of the fact that during the last year and a half, so many citizens had so many really great ideas and maybe some solutions to how we build back better or how we pivot as a city and how we come out of this, the pandemic. And so I wanted to find a way in which we could maybe capture some of those ideas. And I thought, okay, well, we've made an agreement to do the Citizens' Assembly. Why don't we use the voices, capture the voices of the city and the citizens by developing the Citizens' Assembly, the first Citizens' Assembly, which prioritised COVID recovery. And so we set about what was a humongous task, but we managed to find 60 assembly members. I think we had about, I think it was something like 12,000 people initially were interested, and we whittled all of those people down to 60 assembly members through a process of random stratification sampling to reflect the city's population in terms of age, sex, disability, ethnicity, deprivation, employment type, and even where they lived. And so under the theme, how do we recover from COVID-19 and create a better future for all in Bristol, we asked 3 specific topic questions were chosen. And these questions were actually chosen by the respondents to our consultation, Your City, Our Future. 6,500 people responded to that survey. Again, that was another record-breaking achievement, particularly as we were in the middle of a pandemic. They responded to the survey, and their response helped us to design the actual questions. And the 3 questions were, how do we rapidly reduce the impact of our homes on climate change? What changes should we make to our neighbourhoods to make how we travel easier, healthier and better for the environment? And how should we tackle health inequalities in Bristol? So a health topic, a transport topic, and a climate change housing topic. The Assembly met over a period of 6 weeks. They met online for 30 hours over 4 weekends between January and March. To hear information, we had 55 speakers with all those specialisms who engaged in this process. The facilitated deliberation ended up achieving 17 recommendations and 82 associated actions. And as you can see from the video, 3 of those Assembly members kindly came to City Hall last week and formally handed those recommendations to the Mayor. So we publicly acknowledged and announced those actions and recommendations at our One City gathering in November. We agreed then that we were going to take the report to today's Cabinet to input in and to help us input into our corporate strategy process. And we're also taking it to Councillor Cheney through the One City Economy Board so that they can consider some of the developments around economic recovery. So, you know, I'm here today. Oh, yes, so before I say anything, I know that we've got Paula here who, of course I'm going to big up Paula and was never going to forget Paula because without, I think we're cut from the same cloth actually. We kept saying that throughout the whole of this process. We did not once disagree on anything. I think in terms of what we wanted and our vision for this, it kind of just made for a really smooth process. And I also have to big up our officers, John Toy, Amy Sahi, and the rest of the team who did a phenomenal job to get us to this point. So I know that Councillor O'Rourke has a statement and wants to say a few words. But yeah, it was absolutely an honour to work with you on this. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Asha. I hope you've all read my statement. I'm not going to repeat it again. It has been a fantastic experience. I just loved it. It was great. I mean, I think it was a really good example of red and green working well together. And Asha, we did nearly always agree, and by talking things through, we came to better decisions. So it worked really well. And Marvin, I'm really pleased that you got on board with this so quickly. And, you know, you really pushed the credibility of what the citizens could do. And the fact that it's being crafted into the corporate strategy really gives it proper rigour. And we worked very hard to make sure that we got concrete recommendations that could actually be you know, sort of, you know, something that could be measurable and achieved. So I think the citizens came good on that. So I think it's all really positive. The one thing I would want to say in this public forum is, if possible, I mean, I think that we need to come back to the idea that in the original motion, there were 2 types of deliberative processes, and the other one was a participatory budget. And I would just like to maybe, put a marker in there that we could look at that next year as some way, because I know at the time Marvin, you were very keen on that. I think everything is really good about this. And actually, everything this afternoon has been really lovely. And I feel I must apologise because I was away on holidays last week. So I don't feel I've really done this Cabinet papers justice by having enough time to look at everything. But, it's a great way to start the new administration. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Paula. And actually, before I say anything, can I just offer it to any of the Cabinet members? No. Nicola? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. Sorry, I've made an error here. I think we do have a comment here I may have missed. Okay. Oh, Councillor Edwards. Sorry, I moved on a page too quickly. Sorry. So we do have a question from Councillor Edwards. My apologies for that. I was going straight from Paula to the next moment.
Hello. I thought the Citizens' Assembly was great, so I just want to preface it with that. And the recommendations that came out were really strong, especially 3, 8 and 17. They seem to be very strongly supported by the people who took part. Recommendation 8, which was urgently reduce air pollution levels caused by vehicle use to safe and legal levels, got a particularly high recommendation. Which is unsurprising as it affects the health and well-being of Bristol citizens. And the report says that these outcomes will be shared and form part of the evidence base for the update of the Council's corporate strategy and to help shape Bristol's future. So I've got 2 questions. One is, how much influence will those results have? And what will they be balanced against?
Okay, thank you very much for your question, Councillor Edwards. So the recommendations that have been developed by the Assembly are an important part of the City's deliberations. They've been shared with all of the thematic boards, Cabinet, Corporate Leadership Board and the relevant professional services. They'll contribute to the corporate strategy and refresh of the One City plan goals. With that said, the recommendations, as we know, are not binding, and this wasn't a referendum, but because that was not the spirit of the exercise. But there may be things we cannot do for legitimate reasons, and others where we can go even further than the recommendations actually suggested. But we have been committed to being open and transparent about this process. We've agreed that we will report back 6 monthly progress reports and ensuring that the Assembly members themselves, the public, and of course elected councillors have sight of the journey that we're on and where those recommendations are going. In terms of what they will be balanced against, they're really not balanced against anything at this moment, because this was not seen as a kind of adversarial setup. And I think that's why we wanted to go for, it wasn't one climate change over something else. We were in the middle of a pandemic, and I think all those issues that were touched upon were equally important. So they're going to be included with a whole basket of other considerations, the existing One City plan, the hopes of partner organisations, changing demands placed on us by a dynamic world, interests of communities who are just finding their voices, and the manifesto Marvin was elected on to deliver on, and obviously all of it couched within the financial constraints of the council. So, but in deciding whether or not we can implement each recommendation, we have to obviously consider legal, resourcing, other considerations, check that there are no unintended consequences by anything that we do, and how we can deliver the Assembly's recommendations alongside our statutory and other ongoing commitments. I actually personally do feel that I was really excited when I saw them, and yeah, we will have to be guided by the officers, but I didn't see anything in there that I don't think we couldn't deliver as a city, but that will come out of the wash over the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have supplementaries?
I just have one supplementary question. And at the end, when you said about there's nothing that we can't do, I was just wondering about the active travel, 80% active travel by 2030, which I would love to see. How possible do you think that is? What's your vision?
What's my vision? What's the mayor's vision?
I can take that. And maybe
you can take that.
Tom as well.
Yeah,
but this is,
take that one.
and this is where dare I say, outside of Citizens Assembly, this is where this hall and when we're all here could be more rigorous and open about the kind of debates we have. Because that active travel number is not about just 465,000 people who live in the city today. That's about the 550,000 who will be here over the next 25 years. So there's an obvious component of that. What kind of homes do we build and where do we build them? So when we look at city centre sites, brownfield sites, higher density, right? Not just spreading out, not miles from the city centre, not miles from main retail, employment, entertainment zones. That's all part of the way we build in active travel options to that future in which people are not dependent on cars or even buses and trains because they can walk and ride. And we welcome participation in some of those quite difficult conversations when we're looking at delivering homes in the middle of the city. And there is a hot button issue, or people created a hot button issue in height, but there is a conversation to be had about height and density, particularly when we think of not just active travel, but how we protect space for nature and the surface of our, well, not just surface up and above, but, you know, that surface area of Bristol for green space, you know, as well. I think on that front, it won't just be a decision we make. There will be a quality of public discourse around all those factors that make active travel more possible for a growing population into the future. We welcome your full participation in that.
Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. If I can just, actually, before I do, any other Cabinet members want to comment? Oh, Nicola?
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Thank you, Asha and Paula, for bringing this piece of work through and making it happen. I think it's one thing to talk about challenges like this, but actually seeing this through to delivery is not to be underestimated, and I think it is a really good piece of work. I think this sort of way of governance and decision-making and deliberation is really relevant to my portfolio, where you've got these kind of big thematic challenges like climate and ecology, which everyone in the city will have to change the way we live and the way we behave in order to stand any chance of meeting those challenges. And so I say sort of bring it on. I'm really pleased to see this, and I think it could play a really significant role in the future of how we shape our approach to things like climate and ecology. Thank you very much, Asha.
Thank you. And I think I should say that, you know, the hope is that, well, the plan is that in September Cabinet, we will be bringing this back as part of the consultation on the corporate strategy, and as a Cabinet will, through the Mayor, make a decision about how deliberative democracy processes are embedded and are very much a part and parcel of the way in which we do business here in the city. So already some people have put down a marker of what they want the next Citizens Assembly to concentrate on. So if that's, yeah, so that could sit alongside food as one, and maybe the ecological emergency and some of the work that you're doing could be another question.
So, I mean, I'll just say three things off the back. First, fantastic to work collaboratively as well as you did with Paula. So we thank Paula for participation in the way you two work together. When you say you cut from the same cloth, we can see that. Yeah, I think there's something true in that, actually. So yeah, no, that Irish Jamaican connection coming through is fantastic, as you say, and you know, something good happened as a result. Second thing, just in terms of direct feedback from a couple of people I talked to that participated. One was how one of the participants shared that they were really had their eyes open by the number of interdependencies. No issue exists in isolation, and I welcome the opportunity for people to enter into that space. And we constantly talk about the city being complicated and multidimensional, and there are potential of unintended consequences, and good interventions can have negative unintended consequences for some people. And that's all the kind of that's all the grappling we were doing with government about the introduction of a clean air zone, wasn't it? We were saying, it's a blunt instrument and so forth. But I think that the fact that a number of people came back and said, actually, we were forced to think fresh in a new ways about existing challenges that we thought we understood in their context, I think was really rich and is really important to the quality of our public discussion about the future of our city and the challenges and the opportunities that we face. And on a hyper-personal level on that front, one of the participants told me that having participated in the Citizens' Assembly, they were inspired to go back to education. And they were so enthused and engaged by having gone through this process. They've gone back and they want to do, I think they're going to do some social sciences now, as a degree level, I think, or something. And I thought that was actually fantastic, that there were other consequences. But Asha, having said all that, let me... I think it is to be noted, the report, so I'm going to hand back to you to note the report.
Okay. So yes, I just wanted to say as well, I think one of the things that the Citizens' Assembly did for many of the participants was really get them to think about how they engage in their local communities, and many have actually gone away and actually, ramped up their kind of volunteering or getting involved in local activities. So it really has had a positive impact, and you'll see that in the final report that comes through. This report is for noting, and I'd recommend noting the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's being displayed on the screen now. Okay, the final item now is item 23, which is a report of Monitoring Officer, Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman public reports. And this is a report from our Monitoring Officer, Tim O'Gara. So Tim, can I ask you to introduce this report?
Thank you, Marvin. This is a formal report from the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman that relates to two cases where the Ombudsman has made a finding of fault against the Council. As the Council's monitoring officer, I have a duty to report the findings of the Ombudsman to Cabinet. The first case relates to missed bin collections, and the second case relates to a noise nuisance complaint. Full details of both cases are set out in the Ombudsman report, and the appendix sets out what went wrong in these cases, the escalation of the complaints, and the learning within the Council arising from these cases. The Ombudsman report makes a number of recommendations. Firstly, an apology to the two complainants, and the payment of £100 compensation in each case. Secondly, to review the processes for monitoring complaints. Thirdly, to ensure waste monitoring arrangements are robust, and to provide the Ombudsman with details of the missed bin collections policy. These recommendations have been accepted and implemented by the Council, and the Ombudsman report acknowledges that the Council has accepted its recommendations. It is important that the Council learns from these types of cases, and I am satisfied that appropriate steps have been taken to improve processes for handling claim cases which are referred to the Ombudsman. Cabinet is asked to formally consider the findings of the Ombudsman and to endorse the actions taken to implement the recommendations in the Ombudsman's report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. So we've had no public forum statements or questions on this item. Any of the Cabinet members comment on this? Nicola?
Thanks, Marvin, and thanks, Tim, for bringing this important report. I just wanted to put kind of a human aspect to this in terms of just making the observation that citizens' feedback and citizens' complaints matters, and this is an example of that, where actually there clearly was a failing in both those cases in terms of their concern and their issue. So in the new administration, as a Cabinet Member for Waste and Regulatory Services, I just want to apologise on behalf of the Council and also make the observation that we'll take those lessons very seriously, and we're already seeing changes to the way Bristol Waste is reporting their missed collections on a daily basis, and many councillors in the Chamber and watching this will have seen those reports coming through. So these complaints matter, they make a difference, and we're learning the lessons on the back of them. So thanks, Marvin.
No, thank you, Nicola. And, every confidence with you with this portfolio now and really getting on top of this. So really appreciate your leadership on this. So thank you, and thank you, Tim. Cabinet notes the recommendations are set out in this report and which will now be displayed on the screen. So that's the end of today's Cabinet meeting. Thank you, new Cabinet colleagues and everyone else for attending. And I will just mention, because our pictures will go out. One of the commitments we've made is to much more inclusive leadership in Bristol. and where we have control, I think we're delivering that. Just in terms of the number of women in the cabinet, number of people of African heritage in the cabinet. Unfortunately, we lost Hafsal. I think our political leadership certainly looks much more and reflects much more Bristol than political leadership has in previous iterations. So I thank you all for being a part of that change, and I really hope that the way we can lead over this next term can be part of that challenge that we mentioned at the beginning, which is about making sure that more people feel it's worth participating in the electoral process to make sure the right people are elected in this chamber, looking out for their interests. Okay, so thank you all. And next cabinet meeting's on Tuesday, the 13th of July, 4 p.m. Right, Simon? Okay, here at City Hall. Take care.